Hi, I'm Sarah and I'm your success coach, and this is the video presentation series Resources for Success. This video is about referencing. Where has your information come from? Now, you may or may not be familiar with referencing. It can be a bit of a challenging thing to get your head around at first. If you've studied in higher education before, you would have done some referencing, or you might not have looked at it for quite a while and you need a bit of a refresh. But if you've never seen it before, I'm here to try to break it down for you, and we can go through it little bit by little bit, and we'll try and make it as simple as we possibly can. So in this video, we're going to explore several questions about referencing. First of all, why do I need to reference my information in the first place? Why is it so important? Secondly, what is plagiarism? This may or may not be a familiar word to you, but I hope to explain to you what this is and how we can avoid this. And lastly, what referencing style should I be using? What does it look like? How do I actually do it? This is what I hope to talk you through in this video. Let's start off by talking about what referencing actually is, especially if you haven't seen it before. Referencing is a way of acknowledging that you have used the work or ideas of other people in your assessment. Now that is not only text, it's not only words and paragraphs, it includes other things too. If you've used a video, if you've used a podcast, if you've used an image, all of these things are sources of information as well, and they also need references. It even includes things like statistics, even an idea, a theory. All of these things are coming from other people, and we need to acknowledge them. So what kinds of resources might I be referencing? If you watched our reading and research video presentation, I would have talked to you about some academic resources and some other kinds of resources that you might be using to get your information. And here are some of them here. So we talked about using books and journal articles and websites, but there are lots of other sources of information too that you might use as you make your assessments. And a lot of these are acceptable, but they all need to be referenced. Even things like images, charts, diagrams, fact sheets, policy documents, all of them need a reference. So basically, all the information you use that comes from somewhere else needs a reference. Okay, fine, but why do I need to reference this information? Well, there are three major reasons why we reference things in academia. The first reason is it actually adds credibility to your work. It shows your facilitator that you've actually read quite widely, found lots of different sources of information. And this is very important. It will give you better grades. It provides evidence of the research that you've done. This is very important too. Secondly, you want to allow other people to find the resources that you have used. Let's say you've written a really interesting essay, and in this essay you've referred to an idea by this author. And someone's reading your essay and they think, wow, that's actually a really interesting idea. I'd like to know more about that. But maybe I'll interpret it in a little bit of a different way. So it's really good for that person to be able to locate the original source because they found it in your reference list. Then they can go to the source, whether it was a book or a fact sheet or something else. They can go to it and read it themselves, and they can interpret the information in their own way. And they might even be able to use it for something they're writing in the future. So it's a way of sharing information with other people. Finally, a very important reason why we need to reference is we want to give credit to the people whose ideas we are using. And we want to avoid this terrible thing called plagiarism, which we will discuss in more detail. So what is plagiarism? Plagiarism is like academic theft, academic stealing. So it's when you're taking the work and the ideas of other people and you're pretending that it's your own. Now, plagiarism can be deliberate, but more commonly, it can be accidental as well. And one of the purposes of this video is to help you avoid the accidental plagiarism. And if you're doing it accidentally, it means that perhaps you've never referenced before. You don't know that you need to. Perhaps you're not using the correct referencing style. Or even perhaps you don't know how to directly quote correctly or how to paraphrase. And we're going to talk about all of these things, so I'm hoping that I'll make these clear to you in the next few minutes. Now, deliberate plagiarism is another thing altogether, and I hope that nobody here would do that. Deliberate plagiarism is when you know it's wrong, but you do it anyway. And that includes things like buying an assignment online, paying somebody else to write the assignment for you. It includes copying and pasting from websites, or directly copying from a book or from an article. Even if you have a reference, you cannot do these things. Just on the plagiarism topic, you may have noticed in Moodle, as you go through your subjects, that when you submit your assessments, it is recommended that you submit them through a program called Turnitin. Now, Turnitin is not just for this college. Turnitin is a program that almost all higher education institutions use, and this is a plagiarism detection software program. Now, how Turnitin works is you upload your assessment to Turnitin, a written assessment, and Turnitin produces what's called an originality report. In this originality report, you will have a similarity percentage rating. And this similarity rating is based on how much of your work has been directly copied from somewhere else. Now, in this picture here, you'll notice that it's 32% similar, which is actually quite high. The basic rule is 20% is the maximum, and your work should be a lot less than that. If it is higher, your facilitator or whoever is grading your work will give it a really thorough checking to make sure that you haven't plagiarized. Now, Turnitin cannot check your referencing. It can't check to see whether your referencing is correct, but it can check to see whether your work has been directly copied. So in the originality report, it is actually color-coded, and a little percentage is given from each source. So as you can see in this picture, for example, if you look at where it says number 2, this has been coded in pink. And if you have a look at the right-hand side there on the picture, you can see that the pink bit, the number 2 bit, has directly come from a website source called absoluteastronomy.com. That means that this highlighted part of your work has been copied exactly from that source. So the sources that you've used, it picks up even where they've come from. And your teacher will look at that report and make sure that there's not too much of that going on. The penalties for plagiarizing are quite severe. They can involve such things as failing the assessment, failing the subject. If you continue to plagiarize, especially if it's deliberate, you may be asked to leave the college. So it's very, very important that you avoid this. And I'm going to show you how you can. Okay, so how do I reference correctly to avoid any difficulties? In the health science discipline, we use what is called the APA referencing style. This style is also used by a few other disciplines, like psychology or linguistics, which is my subject area. There's lots of different styles. You might have heard of Harvard referencing style or Chicago. There's lots of different ones, and you may have used some at other points in your life. But here, please make sure that you only use APA. And it should be the most current edition, which at the moment is the 6th one. In APA referencing style, you are required to reference your information in 2 different ways. You need to supply a full reference for each source in a list at the end of your assessment. Each of these full references also have a short version, which needs to be placed inside the paragraphs of your text. Let's go into a bit more detail about how we're going to use these sources of information. Let's start with direct quotes, because these are the easiest. Directly quoting means we can actually copy directly from a text, but we need to acknowledge that we've done that, and this is the way we do that. If you have a look at this slide, I've actually incorporated the direct quote so it's part of my sentence. It's not sitting there by itself. It's actually inside my sentence. So half the sentence is my work and the other half is the quote. And you know that it's the quote because it has inverted commas. That part is my quoted part. You'll also notice at the end of my inverted comma quote, I have what's called the in-text reference. And in this in-text reference, you'll see a little bit of information, not a lot, just the short version. So in this case, my quote was said by somebody called Tina Viney. The article was from 2018, and the page number was 23. And this is the information I need in my in-text reference. I just need the author's last name, the year, and the page number. I must have that for my direct quotes. Other than that, you're just writing out exactly as it says. That's why they're a bit easier to use than other kinds. But a word of warning, you cannot use too many direct quotes. There's a couple of problems with this. First of all, we talked before about Turnitin. Turnitin is software that picks up things that you've copied. Now the problem with that is Turnitin cannot see the inverted commas and it cannot see the reference. So it will actually pick up your direct quotes as being copied. So you don't want to have too many of these. The other reason why you don't want to have too many of these is you want it to be your original work in your own words as much as possible because it shows that you have understood. Putting a whole pile of direct quotes into your text does not show your own understanding, and your facilitator will not give you the best grades. So that's why we don't want to use too many of those. So if we can't use a lot of direct quotes, what do we do instead? I still want to use other people's ideas. The most common way to incorporate other people's work into yours is to use a technique called paraphrasing. Now, when you're paraphrasing, what that means is you're reading information, you're understanding it, and you're rewriting it in your own words without actually copying the text or the exact words. So you want to change as much of the words in the text as possible so that it sounds like you've written it instead. The most common mistake that people make when they paraphrase is if you look at the text and try to change it at the same time, it will always come out looking pretty much the same. Try it and you'll see what I mean. The better way to do it is read the information first. You might need to read it a few times to make sure that you really understand everything it's saying. After that, cover it up, look away from it. Don't look at the original source as you try to rewrite it. If you've made some notes, this will also help. Especially because when we make notes, we tend to make short versions, abbreviations, dot points. If you just look at those, instead of looking back at the original source, you will be forced to rewrite and reconstruct in your own way because you'll need to transform those short notes into full sentences. But never look back at the original source until you've finished paraphrasing. At the end of your paraphrase, you'll need a reference. So let's look at that. How do I add an in-text reference when I'm paraphrasing? I can do it in two ways. I can actually put the reference at the beginning of my sentence, or I can put it at the end. Either one of these ways is completely correct. It doesn't matter which one you choose, but they look a little bit different. If you'd like to, please feel free to pause this video and study the differences between the two types. Once you've done that, let's see if you identified all the differences. If it's at the beginning of my sentence, you'll notice that I have brackets, but only around the year. The author's last name is not inside the brackets. I have to incorporate that as part of my sentence by saying something like, according to Boyd, she's my author. And then I've just got the year in brackets. But you might notice in the second version, when the reference is at the end of my sentence, I've actually finished my sentence before I get to the reference. So I put the whole thing in the brackets with a full stop afterwards. And you'll notice that it's the same information though. I have the author's last name and the year. And that's all I need. I don't need inverted commas or a page number because I'm not directly quoting. I've written this in my own words. All right, so we've talked about the in-text referencing. Whatever type of resource you're using, the in-text referencing will always be the same. The last name and the year, possibly the page number if you're quoting. That's all you need. But in the full reference list, things get a little bit more complicated. In APA referencing, like we said before, we need both types. We need the in-text ones, which are in your assessment, and we need the full list on the page at the end. So a full reference list, I've actually given you some quick tips and I'll show you what it looks like in a moment. With the full reference list, it's good practice to start on a new page at the end of your assessment. It just looks nicer that way. You should use a heading. The heading should always say references with a capital R. It should not be bold, underlined, capitals, anything like that. Just keep it simple. You should always be listing your resources in alphabetical order by author's last name. There is no need to break them up into type of resource. For example, you don't need to have all the books together and all the journals together. That's not how it works, because each resource is written a little bit differently with different information. A book is not the same as a journal, and that's not the same as a website. And if you've written them correctly, it will be obvious what they are. That's why you don't need to put them into sections. Also, there's no need to use numbers or dot points in your reference list. There's no need to double space it, but there is a need to apply what's called a hanging indent. And I will show you how to do that a little bit later on. What that means is the first line will be aligned left, but the second or third lines of your reference, if it's the same one, will be indented. Now, it might be very tempting to use the spacebar or the tab key to do that, but please don't. If you try it, you'll see why. It will completely destroy your spacing, and it's very difficult to put it back to normal. But I will show you in a moment how to do the indent. Okay, so what should a full reference look like? You've seen what an in-text reference looks like, but what about a full one? Well, like I was saying before, each type of resource will look a little bit different. A book will not have the same information as a journal article, or a website, or a video. They'll all look a little bit different. And because there are so many different types, we don't expect you to remember them. I don't remember them, and I've been a student for years. So, we've actually supplied you with a handy APA referencing style guide, which you can find by clicking on the Study Resources from your Success Coach menu and finding the downloadable guide there. It's a very good idea to keep this with you so that you can refer to it constantly as you're preparing your reference list. Okay, so how you use the APA referencing style guide, the first thing you need to do is identify which type of resource you're using information from. Is it a book? Is it a journal article? Is it a video? Is it an image? Something like that. Look for it in the guide, and then make sure you follow exactly what the guide tells you to do. And this includes the little formatting things like italics, commas, full stops. These things all need to be in the right place. So it's a little bit of a time-consuming job at first. It can be a little bit frustrating, but it all needs to be there. And once you get used to it, it'll be second nature. So let's have a look at what a full reference actually looks like. On this slide, I've given you some information here. I've been reading this article by Eva Boyd, which was published in 2018. And it's from this journal, the Aesthetics Practitioners Journal. That's where I was reading my article. And the name of the article is The Health and Beauty Benefits of Grapeseed Oil. And I know that this is volume 38, issue 3 of this journal. And I really like this article because it's got something that I really want to use in my assignment. That was my little paraphrase that I showed you on the earlier slide. That's from this journal, this article. So what I need to do is I need to go to my referencing style guide and look for academic journal. And I need to find out what information I need to make my reference. And it will give me an example of what it looks like, just like this one here. If you would like to pause the video at this point, examine the reference very closely, see if you can see how the information is set out and what I've actually included here. Okay, so if you're ready to talk about it, let's go through it together. As you can see, we have the author's last name, but now we've included her first initial as well. Not her first name, just her initial. We also have the year in brackets. That's very important. Then we have the name of the actual article. After that, we have the name of the journal. So we have two different titles there. And the name of the journal is actually written in italics, but the name of the article is not. Then we'll have the volume number and the issue number. The volume number is also in italics, but the issue number is not. It's in brackets instead. And then we'll have the page numbers of that particular article. So that's all the information you'll need to make a journal article reference. If it's a book or a website or something else, it will be different, so please consult your guide. Let's look at an example of what all of these sources might look like if we were writing it as a full list. And you will need to do this in the end. Just a note before we go through this list, it's a very good idea. Every time you use a resource, write the full reference for it as you're using it. You want to do these one at a time. It's very difficult to make a full reference list from scratch when you come to the end of your assessment, especially if you're not used to it. It's much easier to write them one by one as you use the resource, and then you can pull them all together into one document at the end. Your full reference list might look something like this. As you can see, I mentioned before that it should be listed alphabetically by author's last name. You can see that happening here. I also talked about the hanging indent. So as you can see, the author's last names are aligned left, and if they go onto another line, they're actually indented. I'll show you how to do that a little bit later. Another thing you might notice is each one of these resources is a little different. So the first one, I know that the first one is a book because it doesn't have the information that a journal article would have. It has the information a book would have. It has an edition number, and it also has publishing details. Journals don't have those things. The second one is the journal article reference I showed you before. I know that's a journal because it has the information that a journal should have. The third one is some kind of document that it looks like I downloaded it from a website. Okay, so I know that because it has some extra information that a website reference would have. It has the date that I retrieved it, and it has a URL where I can click on to find it again. So as you can see, there's no need to divide them up by type because I can look at them and I know exactly what they are. I said I was going to tell you how to make the hanging indent. This is what you do. You need to make sure that your reference list is highlighted, and you also need to make sure that it's just single-spaced, not double-spaced. So those two things, you need to make sure that they're done before you do this. Then the first thing you do is you go to your little expansion arrow for the paragraph menu. This is in Microsoft Word. And you click on this little arrow, and you'll come up with a pop-up menu. And in this pop-up menu, it will have a little tab that says indentation. So what you do with the indentation, there'll be a button that says special. You set that one to hanging, and then everything should align automatically in exactly the right way. Now remember what I said before, if you try to do this with the tab key or the space bar, it will usually not come out looking very good. And if you try to copy and paste another resource into it, it may mess up your spacing. So it's very important to do it with the Microsoft Word indent. All right, lastly, my top tips for referencing. Keep a copy of the APA referencing guide with you. If you just prefer to have it downloaded on your computer, that's fine. If you want to print it out, make your own notes on it, that's fine too. But keep it with you so you can look at it when you're creating your references. Another good tip is to make yourself a quick guide, because the referencing guide is pretty long and it has a lot of different types of information in it. So it would be better if you find that you're using maybe 2 or 3 types of sources over and over. For example, you might use journal articles and websites the most often. So what you can do is make yourself a 1-page quick guide with just those references on, and then you can have just 1 page and follow those examples every time. Like I said before, record the full reference as you go. Don't try to write them all at once at the end. It will be painful. Referencing is pretty complicated. It takes time to learn, and it takes a lot of practice. Please don't be anxious about it at the start. If this is your first semester, if you're a new student, your teacher will be very lenient, very patient with you at first. If you show that you've made an effort and you've really tried to do the right thing and learn about referencing, they can see that and they will mark you accordingly. Referencing is complicated and it can be challenging at first. Please come and talk to me about it. I'm here to help you. You can make an appointment with me. You can also email me at this address or call me on this number. I really look forward to talking to you about referencing. I would love to check your reference list. Let's talk about it. That's the end of referencing. See you in the next video.